All right, we're shaking things up. It's a little bit different, a little bit weirder, a little bit later, a little bit more badgerier. Welcome to Nerdrevolt number 28. Gamergate did it. I'm your host, Brian Martinez, and I'm joined by the Honey Badgers, or my badgery friends. Allison, say hello.
I fixed my cord.
We'll take that as a hello. Hannah Wallen.
Hello.
Hello. Rachel. Rachel.
Open the sack, Brian.
I will.
Open the sack.
I'm gonna spill all my mail.
It's everywhere.
Out.
Yeah.
And we have a special guest, Jamie Butterworth. Jamie, say hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Jamie. Thanks for coming on the show. All right. So, before we get into today's topic, I'm going to read the mailbag. All right. So, Dynasty Star has made an inquiry. I'm going to read it the way Allison does it. Out of everybody in Gamergate, this is for all of us, who is your OTP? So,
Only true pairing.
Only true pairing, right. Who would you ship together of the people in Gamergate? I guess that means like real or fictional. I don't think it matters. So, yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it to Allison first because I think she has an answer.
No, I don't have an answer. I'm going to give it to Rachel. Rachel.
All right. Rachel always knows who to ship.
Yep.
Oh, God damn it. Well, at first, I was contented to ship Milo and Karen together because I thought that would be just kind of an interesting situation, just sort of awkward because Milo's pretending that Karen's a teenage boy or something. I don't know, not teenage boy, but you know what I mean. Kevin Strong. But now I think I know the one true pairing, and it's the pairing of great follicles, and it's Sargon and Mike. It's Sargon and Dr. Random Cam. And if you have any doubt in your mind, just find that picture online that has the big heart around the two of them and just play "My Heart Will Go On" by Celine Dion in the background. And try.
All right, so I don't know the rules.
And Mike will kill me. Mike will kill me.
I don't know the rules of the OTP, so I have to ask. Does it have to be romance, or could it be like bromance? Could it just be like dudes hanging out?
You know what? Maybe.
Like, could it be like
maybe that's okay.
Like perfect strangers kind of a friendship? Could that be a thing? Because I can come up with
I don't think anyone even fucking remembers Perfect Strangers.
I remember. I bet Hannah remembers it. I remember Perfect Strangers or Laverne and Shirley.
I was too young to
where
appreciate it.
They were just like bros or sisters, however you want to call it.
Yeah. Schmazel. Hot and Tough Incorporated.
Yes, you got it. Schlemiel, Schlemazel. Okay, so this is a difficult one, but I'll go ahead and answer it next. I would, because that's why I was asking about the non-romantic thing. I would pair Christina Hoff Sommers and Shoe on Head because I think that they'd have a great big sister little sister thing that I think would be fun. I just want to see that. I think that'd be fun. No, you guys weren't expecting that. Hence the silence.
Yeah.
I made a bad choice.
Didn't expect that. Yeah.
There are no bad answers.
Only bad people.
Only bad. Okay.
Shit.
Yeah.
Wait. What about Christina Hoff Sommers and Karen as sort of a bromance kind of thing? Yeah, that would be cool. Like I would watch a movie where they were just kind of on a road trip, like across America.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think Shoe because there's an age difference, there's an attitude difference. Christina Hoff Sommers looks like she wouldn't ever curse, and she'd be like, "Oh, phooey, I burned the muffins," and Shoe on Head is really foul mouthed, and there's an age difference there. You see, it's like a sitcom. Like you have to really put these personalities together and watch the friction. That's what I would want. It would make me, and then they'd always like apologize to each other at the end, and they'd be hug, and that would be sweet. That's what I would do. That's why I like sweetness.
But that's
And
why I
they're
like the
saccharine.
contrast. But
Yes.
that's why I like the contrast between Karen and Christina, because Christina seems like she's very sort of polite and everything like that. But Karen, Karen has that sort of
That could be fun too.
brashness as well. So it's like, because you could imagine them just sort of like having a flat tire in the middle of the desert, and maybe Christina like loses her cool a little bit, and and Karen's like, it's okay, it's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
She's ready to change that tire.
We have some suggestions from the chat. I think the one I liked the best came from Shining Starlight, who said Karen and Censor Duck.
Well, you know what? That was actually a really great pairing, because Censor Duck was up in the house and everything with us. Like it was fun.
Bradford Walker suggested Mercedes and Grums because reasons, and Sir Percival Gallant says Lauren and Anna. Oh, and Zopi. Is it? Huh? Yes,
Like
it had to be Anna Cherry.
Has to be.
And I don't know if it's Zopi or Zoppy. Zoppy titled this Shipstorm.
Shipstorm.
I like that.
That's good. Lauren and Anna could be interesting. Is Lauren gay? Yeah, she is, totally. I'm not even going to finish that statement. Oh, and by the way, if you're going to pair Milo with anybody, Rachel, you got to pair him with Oliver Campbell, because, yeah.
Yeah.
That pretty much sells itself, as it were.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Allison, is your mic still fucked up, or what? You're being quiet. Okay. So I will ship on Allison's behalf. And I choose...
No, but I shipped the other thing too. I shipped the other thing before this one. Yeah, Oliver and Milo. Just kind of give them big manly hugs.
Yes. I choose Otter Jesus and let me see. This is on Alice's behalf. I think Otter Jesus and who's the and Shannon. There you go. Liberal lunacy, because they need more love. So, and I'm gonna give it to them. But I'm gonna have them give it to each other, or Joe and Tom from *Halt and Catch Fire*. Yes, because they're totally Gamergate. All right.
Yeah, that's totally Gamergate, Brian.
Hey, harshing.
It could be. It's totally Gamergate.
I have to deal with Shining Starlight saying me and Karen. Like, seriously.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you could climb Karen like a tree.
Oh.
I'm not that short.
How about Karen in the tree? That would be an interesting.
Has the tree tweeted any Gamergate tweets?
I don't know. Like, maybe that needs to be the next novelty Twitter account, which is Karen's Tree or Karen's Bush.
But has the tree gotten over being raped by the sloth yet?
Oh, no. Oh, gosh, I remember that.
Then Dynasty Star also said, same question as above, except for anime. That could take forever. We could probably do a whole show on it. So.
Oh, shit. Let me think.
If you want to throw something out there, that's fine.
Okay, Rei Hino and Minako Kino.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what?
I don't even know who those.
Sailor Venus and Sailor Mars.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I ship it.
Yeah, okay, but I mean, yeah, all right.
Well, no, there's hints given throughout to support that particular ship, and they even go full ship in the live action, the terrible live action series, which I watched every single episode of. Don't judge me.
I'm judging you. It's too late. Since I only watch like stuff like Hokuto no Ken and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I'm not shipping anyone. Well, maybe the Pillar Men. I'm shipping the Pillar Men.
Not even the two main male characters in the second arc.
No, the Pillar Men. Not Joseph and Caesar. They're
not even a little bit. Not even because, I mean, considering how fabulous they are.
They're not. That's not gay. That's fabulous.
They're pretty fabulous, and they're very, very fashionable, Brian.
That's right.
I
They
bet you
shake hands with
anything.
their penises, but it's still a bro handshake.
As long as the balls don't touch, it's not gay.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It's like a high
I bet
five.
you anything. I bet you anything. You go in under Rule 34 for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and it's all gay porn. I bet
It's like
you
a
anything.
chest bump with dicks, which is, that's cool if you can pull it off. No, there's totally probably some yaoi out there, but I'm not interested in finding it. You go ahead, Rachel. Just go to Tumblr and put in JoJo. I'm sure you'll find a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
I'm sure. All right, so the next mailbag, this is a little bit longer. Guinness Walker writes, "Hey there, honey badgers. If you're reading this off air, which we're not, please feel free to ignore my previous mailbag topic as this one's more relevant. Anyway, a bunch of fans," and he lists off a bunch of people, "all came together after the Humans Nerdcast, where I said go fuck yourself and hung up, and decided to create a podcast directed at anyone who wants to come and have a civilized discussion. Are we not civilized? Thus, Triggered was born. We are planning on doing a few more post shows to gather up more honey badgers, but all are welcome, and we are expanding to a weekly format following our first few shows as a post-show gangbang." That sounds really appealing. "We discuss Gamergate, men's rights, games, politics, news, and, of course, propaganda, as well as anything else laid out on the table by the hosts or any of our guests. It's a completely open forum. We're incredibly small on scale right now, but our main goal is to reach out to GG and anti-GG and see if we can't give the voices who have never spoken an opportunity to be heard. Good luck with that. Most of us involved are small voices in the community with a lot to say, and I aim to give people like us a platform to discuss whatever we want. I hope you guys like the idea, but regardless, we are going to give it a try, so a shameless plug to get us going would be a welcome bit of assistance. You can find the show by searching for me, Guinness Walker, Guinness like the drink, one word, on YouTube, or if you feel inclined enough, although I thoroughly understand if you don't, you could link the channel in the description or something," and then he includes a link. "Alas, if you choose not to endorse us, this is fine too. I thank you anyway for your time and consideration, and as always, please, rock the fuck on." So, thank you for that letter.
Although, I hate to say it, that we're plugging it on possibly the least viewed show that we've ever done.
Yeah, well, no, we got 29 people watching right now.
Yeah. I think we got steamrolled over by Sargon.
It said we had one person watching when there were 10 people in the chat under the YouTube video, so I kind of wonder if those numbers are accurate.
There might be a strange way that Google's tracking that. Like, when I'm watching from a tablet, I don't think it includes me, and I can't comment in the chat section either.
Yeah.
Well, it might depend on the device, but you know what? Point is, we're here. And also, I want to say, and I find this to be personally inspiring, Guinness Walker, the fact that you are willing to make a show or a hangout after the show where you're allowing anyone from any side of the discussion to come together and discuss things, and that you're open to both sides of that, I think that says a lot, and I'm glad that you're doing it, because that's the kind of stuff that, that's the kind of stuff that I want. You know, like, let the arguments win. And that's how I feel. So, but that's it for the mailbag. Do you guys have any thoughts before we move on to the main show?
No?
Fucking triggered.
Yeah, triggered. I don't know by what. By the air. I'm triggered by the air. It oppresses me because I need to breathe it to live.
So you're saying you have an air trigger?
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Anna.
No, you invited that, though. You totally invited that.
You were asking for it.
Yep.
You shouldn't have dressed your statement that way.
Let's just do this thing. Candace, why don't you... Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. Let's start with the thing that... why is Gamergate... It's always Gamergate's fault when something happens. So let's do this and give the floor to Hannah so she can tell us what's going on.
Wait. Before we do that, what? Yes, stop.
Okay.
It's not always Gamergate's fault. It's often our fault, or people who identify as men's rights activists. It's our fault when things happen.
No, it's all, but this is all synonyms, Allison. Gamergate, right-wing conservative, nutbags, men's rights activists, fedora wearing
neckbeards,
PUAs.
I don't even think the fundamentalist Christians get this. Like
things with penises on them. All of it's the same thing. All of it's the same.
Yeah, but I don't even think fundamentalist Christians get this. Seriously.
They know. Well, I don't know.
It depends on which area of the press you're talking about. There are areas of the press in which every religion gets this, and that includes fundamentalist Christians. But to be honest, this is Gamergate experiencing yet again the same thing that MRAs experience, and that is misrepresentation in media based on very, very, very flimsy evidence. I'm going to go ahead and start.
Do it now.
The thing. I'm going to read the thing. And of course, my computer decides to jump to the bottom of the thing for no reason. Okay, there we go.
We're also Elliot Rodger.
My computer hates me. Atlanta station.
Yesterday you said tomorrow.
Falsely links Gamergate.
Apparently, Rachel also hates you. Could you start again?
Yeah, no, that's just the title. Atlanta station falsely links Gamergate #Gamergate to shooter. On August 28th, ABC Atlanta affiliate WSB-TV ran a story claiming Bryce Williams, whose name I misspelled. Wow, that's awful. Bryce Williams, the gunman who shot reporter Allison Parker and cameraman Adam Ward, was a Gamergater. The story was almost entirely based on an interview with an obvious troll, with a sarcastic tweet thrown in as a second source. The interview, done on video with the speaker's back to the sun to hide his identity, is cringeworthy at best. Both the interviewer and the interviewee demonstrate a lack of knowledge about Gamergate, and much of the interview is stilted and unrealistic. The broadcast was uploaded to YouTube, and the station's Twitter account sent out a link to a page with a print version of the story and the video. It caught the attention of Gamergaters, who immediately began the work of archiving the misreporting and setting the record straight. A Kotaku in Action post titled Local Gamer Says He Communicated with Shooter That Killed Journalists Online, WSB-TV, the broadcast title, and the comments below it contain much of that discussion, including links to archives of the story and other information. The station was contacted and offered evidence that they had been trolled, but instead of running a correction, they simply removed parts of the story and the video that made it that obvious and left it up. On the 29th, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, I don't know if it's Ian or Ian Miles Chong, posted an article on GamerRanks titled TV News Station May Have Erroneously Linked Shooter to Gamergate. The article detailed the story and the reporter's failure to verify her information, ending with Chong stating his doubts about its veracity. Later, the WSB-TV video had been edited. The YouTube commenter Harmful Opinions uploaded a video titled Harmful News, the Gamergate Shooter, and an update entitled Harmful News, WSB-TV Hides the Evidence. These videos detailed both the holes in the original story and the way they had been covered up. As of September 1st, today, WSB-TV has not taken down the article or run any correction. Discuss.
So I think that I saw the one of the news reports where they were interviewing the guy, and they had him like silhouetted and stuff. And I think, I think the guy is a troll. I mean, like he said, we're part of it. That was a part of an online group called Gamergate. There's no like it was like an online guild that he played with called Gamergate. I think it's a troll. I mean, like he's just fucking with them, and the news media is just eating it up, and they didn't even make an effort to, like you said, they didn't even try to correct anything, and it's kind of hilarious. But the sad part about it is the fact that, and this reminds me of the discussion that had gone on in Airplay. The media, not only do they not have an interest, most likely, in making the correction or vocalizing that correction because it doesn't suit the narrative that they wanted to put forward. But it's also likely because they're just too disinterested. They don't think Gamergate is important enough. This is one of the things that came up in SPJ Airplay a lot, where they were like, well, it's just gaming. It was kind of the attitude that some of the journalists were like, well, why do we care about this, or why should we? And it's just kind of fucked up. So, Jamie?
Yeah, the one thing that really bothers me about this sort of thing, not necessarily this story in particular, but I guess we'll kind of highlight that also. I've been gaming since the mid-'80s when I was 4 years old and the Atari was my babysitter because my mother was a horrible parent. But the thing is, it used to be that when the gaming industry was attacked by people like, Jack Thompson and the general media, that the games media at least would rush to defend the industry, say they're full of shit and like debunk them however many ways they can. But now we've kind of reached a point where a story like this should be thrashed by the gaming media and ripped to shreds, and instead these people that are supposed to be representing this industry are instead embracing it. And that's the issue that I have. They should be defending the industry instead of letting every kook and crackpot try and speak against it. It's ridiculous.
Rachel?
Yeah, well, the thing is I was actually talking to a couple of my friends while the story actually broke, and was hearing about this come out in real time as people were just debunking the hell out of it. I mean, that whole Steam account situation, it was only like 24 hours old, and they could tell. So all it would have taken to debunk that whole idea that this person had played with this guy over Steam or something like that was a little bit of research. Probably would have taken like 2 seconds. But they just didn't do it. I mean, that's all it would have taken just to see how bogus this whole thing was.
Research? You ask too much of the media.
It's like, research? What's that?
So,
shit.
So yeah, Jamie, I wanted to ask you. You sent me a message, which is why I brought you on. You said that you were this sort of thing happened in near your hometown or in your hometown, right? And that you had some you knew people, or you have people in your family that knew one of the victims,
right?
Can you tell me what other? Because you said a lot in your message. Could you kind of sum up your thoughts on this whole thing and your ideas regarding what happened?
Sure. First and foremost, the guy's name actually isn't Bryce Williams. That was just his stage name, for TV stations.
Yes.
His actual name was Vester Flanagan, which is an odd name, but the whole thing is, when you kind of go over all the information that he provided, and when you kind of have a childhood, teenage, young adult years growing up in Roanoke experience, you kind of put two and two together and figure out that this guy bought into that entire social justice narrative and took it to the extreme. Because when you look at the history of what he himself provided and some of the information that we've gleaned from his past, this is a guy that kind of moved from town to town working at different stations, and he would get dismissed time and time again. And every single time he would cite discrimination and he would go to court. And when you're constantly going from place to place and you're seeing, racism and homophobia at every turn, usually it's you as opposed to everyone else. So when you come to Roanoke, Virginia, which the WBDJ station is in Roanoke, I went there as a kid and learned how TV stations work. When you come to Roanoke, the thing is that city in itself is a very meritocratic city. It doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter your race, it doesn't matter your orientation. It's what you do and who you are, not what you are. And that's the thing. This guy said that Adam Ward, who my cousin actually went to high school with him, took a photojournalism class with him and knew him, and actually was at his memorial service yesterday. But Vester Flanagan had stated that he had had it out for him, or he went to HR on him or something, and the reality of the situation, and the manager at WBDJ had stated the only interaction he had with Adam was he worked with him one time, and also he was there to to film when he was being dismissed, because I'm sure when they have to dismiss an on-air personality, they probably have to have someone there to kind of record it, just in case something goes on. So, I mean, that's what the manager of the station stated. As to his grudge against Allison, he said that Allison was saying snide racist remarks to him or something along those lines, but that's his accusation everywhere he's went. And if we read the information, because we don't have access to the full 23-page manifesto he has, all we have are these excerpts we've gotten from ABC. So we can't go through and try and figure out his entire mindset. But what he specifically stated was that, for one, he said the Virginia Tech shooter was an inspiration to him, which, by the way, Virginia Tech is 20 minutes outside of Roanoke, and the Virginia Tech shooter legally bought his guns in Roanoke also. He said the Tech shooter was an inspiration to him, and also after Dylan Roos shooting in Charleston, South Carolina, that was kind of what sparked him. That was what made him go out and buy a gun 2 days after the shooting happened. And before he actually went out, he stated in his manifesto that he had etched the initials of the Charleston victims into his bullets before he actually, unfortunately shot down the two reporters. And the thing is, I mean, this is all premeditated of him, and he lists all that out, even in the excerpts that we have of him. And I can't look at it any other way than seeing that he bought into this whole social justice bullshit, hook, line, and sinker. And this was basically him taking it to the extreme. So, I mean, it's kind of like he had the balls to do things that all the Twitter warriors talk about constantly and won't do. So, I don't have any other way to look at it, really. Because a lot of people will say, no, this wasn't a hate crime, this wasn't race-motivated. He literally said it was race-motivated, and he's had issue after issue everywhere he's went with this exact same sort of thing. And if someone has that many issues, they should probably look at themselves and not everyone else.
This really sort of brings out the toxic nature of the victim mentality that goes with the social justice warrior sort of ideology, the idea of taking the impersonal personally. And it just seems from the newscast that I've seen of this, that seems to have been what this guy did. The two things that stick out in my mind, I was mentioning them to everybody here before the show, were his taking offense because somebody had a watermelon at work, which in the past that's been like a black stereotype, had something to do with watermelon. And then the other one was, I think it was the anchor herself had mentioned that she knew somebody living, a family member, I think, living on a street called Cotton Street, and he took that personally, even though it was a real street. That was, and it wasn't directed at him. It wasn't. She wasn't trying to make him feel oppressed. She was talking about people she knew and talking in the middle of the conversation where it was reasonable to be talking about them and mention that. And it just seems like that chip on the shoulder mentality, that tendency to, if something has something in common with, say, a stereotyping or a factor that historically has been in some way oppressive to a group, that forever must always be considered an act of oppression when it comes into the sphere of awareness of members of that group. That is so, it's not just victimy, it creates a level of helpless inability to exist without becoming a pincushion, basically, for offense. You literally cannot exist in the world without encountering things that have some historical negative connotations. And in this instance, this is probably not the only factor that led to this guy's that led to him doing this, but it was a contributing factor, and it definitely demonstrates that the toxicity of this type of mentality is dangerous. That if you take it to an extreme, that it is not just dangerous to the self, but it becomes, it's damaging to the self. I mean, you're living in hell if you have that attitude that everything anybody ever does and says must be vetted for whether or not you can be offended by it, and if there's any way you can take offense at it, that you must. That'd be living in hell. But it's dangerous to other people too, in that it can lead somebody who has other reasons to become violent like this to act on it.
Yeah, and then you have like other sort of bodies that they add fuel to it, they feed into it, like spaces like Tumblr and academia and the media, and for whatever reason, either because it gets more clicks, or it gets more people watching, or it creates the cash, essentially, or it just gets people attention, or it justifies people's attitudes, or it's to win some kind of political conversation that's happening on like a larger scale. And they all feed into it. Like, I was just thinking about how there are all these, every time something, it seems like since Gamergate happened, whenever you see, a crime or an event, or even like the threat of something that could have been involved with video games, or with men, or with men's rights activists, or PUAs, or with people even loosely affiliated with it, they link all of that stuff together, and they make bodies like MRAs or the Gamergate or whatever the bad guy, and they basically just make it all one amoeba, just one big thing to attack. And it's ironic because they even do it when all the evidence says that it can't be that. Like, this guy, he was a man of, like, a minority man, mixed as far as I understand it. He was gay. He was for all intents and purposes, in every way, he was an SJW, like in his personality and like the kinds of run-ins he had with people, even if by his own attachment to identity politics. But the thing that ended up working against him was, in the eyes of the press, he played video games. Somebody that they didn't like confirm or try to understand, they didn't dig any deeper than they wanted to, linked him to Gamergate in some way, and they said, we're going to go with it. And all the other stuff was thrown away. And I'm reminded of the Virginia Tech shooting that happened in 2007 by, I think the guy's name was Sung Hui Cho.
Sung Hui Cho.
Yes. And because that was, again, they didn't link that to Gamergate. They didn't link it to, as far as I know, it wasn't linked to MRAs. It wasn't linked to, it wasn't treated the same way that Elliot Rodger or even the guy who shut up the church recently was linked to things like, toxic masculinity, men's rights activists, racists, right-wing conservatives, Christians, which all of that is often just sort of like put all in the same pot. It's basically like, we oppose all of these things, and therefore anyone who does a crime that can fall into one of those categories probably falls into all those other categories, because we see people as homogenous globs of person, they belong to a specific group, and we're going to try and connect them to as many groups as possible. But when Sung Hui Cho did it, they were just like, well, it was just like a crazy lone gunman. As far as I know, I don't remember, I don't know if there was any, because that was a while back, so I don't know if there was, I don't think that the men's rights activists were something that the press talked about, in that regard. But if that would have happened now, it would have been all about toxic masculinity. I'm fairly certain. Or video games, or Gamergate, or something.
Yeah.
Whatever best fits an agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One of the things that's particularly chilling though about all this is just the level of narcissism in all of this. I mean, if you think about it, basically saying like that everything was about him in his mind, everything was about him. He manufactured all of these particular slights in his brain, and then when it came down to to killing these people, what's the first thing he does? He makes sure that he's recording all of it, and then he uploads it all online on Facebook and I think on Twitter and stuff like that to make sure that that people are able to see just what he did.
Well, he probably thought he was totally right?
Well, you know that
and
narcissism.
And he made sure. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Oh, he made sure what?
Go ahead, Rachel.
No. He also made sure that this was happening during a live broadcast too, so there would be more than one angle.
Yeah, that's true. He did. And that kind of narcissism is a common thread. If you look back at mass killings in the United States that have made the news, in each one of them, if there's been something in writing left behind, there has been that it's all about me. It's all directed at me. The whole taking things personally that were impersonal. That is a common thread actually in this type of mass killing, and it may be more related to the cause of people doing this than any of the other factors that people come up with. Well, this or that is the reason that it's gun control needs to be pushed to the forefront. Mental health needs to be pushed to the forefront. This is because they were an MRA. This is because they were a social justice warrior. It doesn't matter. All of those things. That narcissism may actually be the answer. Teaching people to relate better to the people around them and not to take things personally that are not personal as they're growing up, and watching for red flags of people taking things personally that are not personal as they're growing up, trying to help them overcome that might go a lot further to preventing this type of behavior than anything else that people are promoting as a preventative measure. But I wanted to touch on the discussion about the link to Gamergate and video games. I wanted to point out in the original report, the reporter who is claiming that connection did say she contacted the FBI to ask if he had any gaming paraphernalia, and this is how she phrased it, gaming paraphernalia.
I don't know if she phrased it exactly that way.
I think it was gaming equipment. It was gaming equipment in his apartment or in his home, and there's actually memes going around with this now, I guess. But anyway, they didn't find anything except a computer and couldn't tell her what was on it. So it's debatable whether or not the guy was actually much of a gamer at all, if he gamed at all. I mean, the profile has a name or has a claim, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it was him. I guess there's other profiles on Steam with the same name, and his didn't really have that many hours in comparison to people who play all the time. So I think there was like only one game on it. So the idea that this guy was actually what he was being called, much less related to Gamergate, is not just in question. It's ridiculous. And the other thing about this is there's an update mentioned. I mentioned Harmful Opinions had 2 harmful news posts about this. The update links to an archive of a tweet from Brad Glasgow, who says, update on the WSB-TV stuff. They are investigating. Will take a couple of days. They will retract on air if it is found to be a hoax. Well, we already know that it's a hoax, and we've already compiled quite a bit of evidence that it's a hoax, and it's been sent to them. So if they don't retract, I don't think it's because it hasn't been found to be a hoax. I think it's because they feel like it can't maybe be proved well enough, widely enough, that it is a hoax. But the video was actually linked to by, oh shoot, now I can't think of the name of it and I don't have it on my screen. It's a prank channel. It was linked to by one prank channel that that basically said this was this other guy who is that's what he does. He pranks. He hoaxes, and basically credited him with doing it and said that he named them. He name dropped them in his interview. My head is so stuffed up right now I cannot remember it, but named them in his interview as sort of a shout out to them. So I mean, this is not only is there evidence that it was a hoax, but there's evidence of who perpetrated the hoax. So we should expect to see a retraction, and if we don't see a retraction, we should start asking why, and loudly and in mass.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jamie?
Yeah, well, it's not like media loves to jump and print or go on TV about hoaxes or anything, but that's a topic for another matter. But anyway, going back on media, what I was saying before, the problem with social justice, narcissism, media, the whole nine, is media is way too eager to jump on the narcissism of these mass shooters, because just about every mass shooter that's made national news, they've shown excerpts from manifestos, they've shown videos, they've shown social media, whatever else, and it's crazy because they don't spend any time on the victims, the people that actually need to be shown. Like, in the Virginia Tech shooting, I actually lost a coworker in that shooting. His name was Henry Lee, and he was one of the kids that actually died in that shooting. No one talks about them. No one. I mean, unfortunately, Allison Parker and Adam Ward are going to be lost in the next couple of weeks. But people are going to be talking about this douche, and that needs to stop. I mean, sure, talk about some of the motivations, things like that. Possibly mention the name, but let it go. Don't highlight their motivations, don't show their videos, don't do any of that stuff. But the problem is, we have a media that feeds on that, and it just perpetuates itself and creates more of the same thing. So it's something, I don't know what can be done about it, other than the media just agreeing to stop, or we all get outraged about it. Of course, it's just more outrage, but that's what the issue is with them.
I found the thing I couldn't remember earlier. It's the pranksters that were credited with this $1 Million Extreme is who was name dropped, and $1 Million Extreme credited a YouTuber called The King, and the links to that are actually under Harmful Opinions' first video, Harmful News, the Gamergate shooter, which actually says update in description now on it. So that's who they were.
I wanted to also add that it seems, I wonder, this is like a question, before we had the internet, everybody wanted to be famous, right? They wanted to be known, they wanted recognition, they wanted to get a level of, I mean, I think it's sort of normal for people want to be immortalized for something. And yeah, you occasionally have the nutbag that tries to do it through something vile because they want to get into the news. And I wonder, though, with the internet age, if people feel smaller, because you see that people that don't even have talent can become really famous now, because they're, for whatever reason, because they show their cleavage on YouTube, or because they maybe they make lots and lots of content that isn't very good, but because people see it so much, it gives them fame, or they sing a really bad song called Friday, or whatever it is, and it makes other people feel anxious. There's a name of the phenomenon, actually, where you feel like other people are getting something out of the internet that you're not getting, and I wonder if this narcissism comes out of the feeling that you deserve something and that you're willing to do something really extreme and messed up to get that recognition, and part of the reason why you're willing to do it is because you know that even in death, people will be talking about you. You know, like Elliot Rodger, basically, for example, he lived in the shadow of his parents who had done greater things than him. No one knew who he was. He was even like, I remember when his father, I think, or his mother, I'm pretty sure it was his father, was at like a red carpet opening for one of his films, and Elliot Rodger was there with him, and he stood in the background with his hands in his pocket and his head down, and no one knew who he was. They thought he was just some random guy walking around the background. Now people know who he is more than his father. I mean, the fact that I can't remember his dad's name is a testament to that. And it's partly because he made the splash that he wanted. And we, and when I say we, I mean the media, essentially, catapulted them into fame. And the people who are supposed to be so outraged about what he's done, you know, by saying that it's because he's a man or because he's an MRA or because whatever reason it is, or in the case of Dylan Roof, because he's a racist, and, you know, and he basically dressed up and put patches on his jacket and got his gun ready and went to the church. That was the intention, was to, I think, make a splash and become someone. You get that feeling, that immortality, I guess, that people get out of it, that need to stand out. And I wonder if that isn't a byproduct, maybe, of us living in an age now where everyone can, like, have their voice be heard, and everyone has, you know, an opportunity to be, be exposed to everybody else. And they do it in the different ways, and some people don't know how to deal with it. I don't know. It's just a thought that I'm having. And my dog's barking at me like a bitch.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I was going to say that I think one of the things that's really changed about the internet is I mean, I don't think people think about the impact that social media has had on the internet itself and how people interact with one another. The way that social media is actually structured, it's often very self-centered, because it's all about your group of friends, or it's all about you and what you specifically want to talk about. And then there's Tumblr, which is microblogging, where you can sort of just share it with everybody. And it's sure, not everybody uses it for those particular things. Sometimes they'll just post, really cute cat pictures or something like that. But a good portion of people that are using this kind of social media, there's certainly a group of people who are just entirely self-interested, and they just do nothing but do stuff like posts pictures of their food and talks about what they're doing at every minute of the fucking day. It's all about them, and I don't know necessarily if it's that's causing this, but I think I would actually blame the way the media is right now and the way that it's changed. Like when you switched over to that sort of 24-hour news station kind of thing. So now when you have this kind of, you have a situation, you have a shooting or something like this, they just kind of amp it up. And then they make the shooter into this sort of weird, morbid celebrity where everything becomes about trying to find out why they did what they did and stuff like that, and nobody really cares enough to respect the families of the people who were lost in that tragedy. And it's really, really sick. And news, these these journalists, they use it for ratings, and there's no shame at all in it. And it's deplorable.
They're quite selective, though, about when they do this. There are shootings that never ever get covered. That like they'll if somebody shoots. Well, if somebody shoots the wrong people, if somebody shoots the people they can make their favorite victims, or if they can link somebody to an ideology or a political issue that they want to link them to, or if the shooting is public, those things get reported on. But the truth is, there are shootings that take place in the country every day that involve 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5 victims or more that nobody ever talks about on the news, at least not widespread. They might make local news, but they don't really make much more than that. I mean, this isn't something I'm talking about from a distance. In one of my old jobs, there was a day I went to work. We had to move away from the area where we usually parked. We couldn't park in our parking lot because it was marked off by police tape. And there had been a shooting where 3 teenagers had been killed and this was not just a mass shooting by one shooter. There was more than one shooter involved, multiple guns. It was like something like 80 different bullets were found, and not different from each other, but 80 separate bullets were found, and it barely even made local news. There's quite a bit of this type of murder that takes place around criminal activity. And if the level of mass murder and very, very personal killings, like not just targeting somebody from a distance, but actually getting up close and personal, invading people's homes, invading people's neighborhoods just for the purpose of killing them, if that was made more public and people were more aware of the level of damage that it's doing, there would be a great deal more questioning in the United States of our drug war, because a lot of that shooting takes place over territory and consumer base and money and things like that.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about that kind of shooting because they can't exploit it politically. Or worse, it can be exploited politically against them. So the idea that these types of things are sensationalized, it's based specifically on how the media can exploit them. It's very exploitative. It's not just sensationalism. It's sensationalism for the purpose of political exploitation. That's one thing. And the other thing is, oh shoot, I forgot what I was gonna. The thing about the mass shooting has really got me kind of worked up, because when that happened, I can remember thinking, oh, this is going to make national news, because there'd been other shootings that size make national news with kids that young. Nobody said a word. It was barely even reported, barely even outside the area at all. And that's been almost 20 years ago, and I'm still pissed off about that it didn't get talked about. And that was kind of when I realized, I started looking into it, how much selectiveness there is in media reporting of gun violence and violent crime in general. The things that you hear about violent crime from the media and how they use those discussions, if they were honest and they actually reported evenly, the picture that people get of violent crime, in particular gun crime, would be entirely different.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Go ahead. I can't remember the other thing I was going to say.
And yeah, this is entirely true. I mean, when you actually look at the statistics, there are tons of, of shootings that exceed, one person, that go to 3 or more. And the situation is the reason why is it's politically inconvenient to acknowledge black-on-black violence and crime and things like that, because it doesn't jive well with the narrative. The more you talk about it's inconvenient for these people who are trying to push the narrative that certain minorities are just categorically oppressed, and it becomes more and more difficult to ignore the fact that there are a portion of people who happen to fit into that category who are just going to be statistically criminals. It's going to be, it's like that in every group of people. There's always going to be people who engage in crime, but it doesn't jive well with the narrative that they're trying to push. It's really, really hard to paint somebody who's killing a whole bunch of people as a victim. Very difficult. And I would even go so far as to say, if it wasn't for social media, if it wasn't for the fact that the killer uploaded it to YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, nobody would have gone on the story. because there were people who were already suggesting that it was probably another white guy who had done this time.
Yeah, that's another
Already
thing.
happened.
There's a whole range of school shootings that have never been highlighted in the media because the shooters were black.
Right.
Mainly taking place in gang territory.
Absolutely, it's inconvenient. Go on, Jamie.
Okay, but as I was going to say, I mean, you're absolutely right about the media not highlighting things that don't fit an agenda or aren't politically expedient. I actually shared a video on my Facebook just the other day. It was a black grandmother, and when I say grandmother, I mean she had to have been in her 40s. She didn't look that old, but I think it was either her granddaughter or someone she knew was gunned down through gang violence. And she was criticizing the Black Lives Matter movement because, they're using Michael Brown as like their poster boy for everything else. And she was going on and on about, look, you're highlighting the wrong people. These are the people you need to focus on. No one's reporting on these, victims of actual, violence that really need help. And she was absolutely right. And that's the thing, is the media doesn't focus on things that aren't politically expedient and don't fit an agenda. And, even kind of the shadowy agenda, so I don't want to say shadow agenda, but, even sort of the underlying agenda. Like, I'm sure we've all heard the whole, there's been 200-some mass shootings in 200-some days this year. But at the same time, you have to realize that a mass shooting is qualified as 4 or more people that are shot, not killed, but shot. And a lot of that is gang violence. They're not all some shooter out to like gun everybody down. It could be, 2-on-2, 2 guys from one gang, 2 guys from another gang have a shootout. Nobody dies, but they all get injured. That's technically a mass shooting. And that's where the statistics come into play. But you have to hit YouTube and dig through all the statistics to find all of this out. The media doesn't talk about that, and that's a lot of the problem right there.
Yeah, but just wanted to add to what you were saying. I know about the shooting you were talking about. Essentially, it was a woman in her 50s. She was a grandmother of a 9-year-old girl that was doing her homework in Ferguson, Missouri, and there was a drive-by, and the people in the drive-by supposedly targeted the wrong house, and they shot that house where the girl was doing her homework, and she died, and her mother was hit but survived. And the part where the grandmother came out in criticism was the police were trying to find out who the killers were, and no one in the area in Ferguson had come forward with leads, clues, anything. They all clammed up because, I mean, they just didn't. They didn't go to the cops with any information, and the police were like, well, if no one comes forward and tells us anything that they might know, we can't catch these people. And it was a gang, it was a drive-by. But that's, again, not something that is convenient to talk about, because that means that you have to see that shootings, whether they're mass shootings or individual ones, in general, they are not a symptom of some greater social, cultural issue in the same way that these people paint it. It's not about gun ownership, it's not about race, it's not about toxic masculinity. It may be about those things on an individual level. Like, I won't say that Dylan Roof's, shooting was not an act of racism, because clearly he was, but at the same time, though, he was a pretty disturbed guy, because the vast majority of people who are racist, they don't go around shooting people. They just keep it to themselves, and they usually express their bigotry in ways that are more about avoiding the people they don't want to be around rather than trying to go out and harm them, because they know it's not really helpful. But because this guy was disturbed, or had issues, that's how the media chose to paint it. And I think it's because, again, we live in an outrage culture where people like to see other people get harmed in some way so they can get really mad. I mean, look at stuff like worldstarhiphop.com, where people just go so they can watch fights, so they can just watch things that appear to create some outrage, so people can feed off of that. It's like people want that, and the media knows it. I mean, they're so sensational that they're just looking for any way to create the narrative that creates a sensationalism that then drives people to click on their website, so that those people get mad, and then they comment, and then they share on their Facebook page and their Twitter, and and then those people see it, and then they share it, and the money just comes rolling in, and people just get more and more angry, and it works. It's probably a lot more productive than like kittens.
Outrage
Well,
addiction.
the outrage culture is actually at least as old as the Jerry Springer Show, but you really got to realize, I mean, it's much older than that. And lynch mobs come from outrage culture as well. It's just that they fed on racism. And I wanted to point that out, but I also want to point out when I've talked about gang shootings here, and we were sort of got into the discussion of gang shootings, there's a significant difference in gang shootings besides the fact that they are not treated the same by the media as other mass killings when they involve multiple victims. But even when they involve multiple victims in a single shooter, the shooter is often a victim in a way usually a victim in a way, really, because having grown up in an environment where he learns that his only choice is to handle conflict with violence, he really doesn't. He's not left without a choice, but he's left with a situation where he might not see other choices, and he might not be able to see other choices, or he might not be able to handle other choices simply because they include difficulties that put him in very, very real mortal danger. And where we talked about like mass media shootings usually tracing back to a person with narcissistic tendencies, that is also not true in the case of gang shootings in mass. These are people who are living in a war zone, basically. A lot of times, you go into the really poor neighborhoods in the inner cities, it's bad enough in some places that the police won't even go in there. And like even in my community, I'm not going to give the long version of this story, but one night I gave a homeless woman a ride home, which sounds odd, but most homeless women are couch surfers, not living on the street in this area. Men end up living on the street. Women surf couches. But at the third place that I took her to, and which is where she ended up staying, ended up being in one of those neighborhoods that the police don't usually go into. And I actually had two people that approached me in that neighborhood to ask why I was there and did I know where I was, and tell me that I really need to get out of there because I would be killed for being white in that neighborhood. And they didn't leave my side. Two large, real big, tall, older black guys wouldn't leave my side until I got in my car and drove away. And they found somebody she could stay with. And it was just like I didn't even realize that it was that bad in my community. I knew other communities, that were bigger had it that bad, and I knew, like the shooting that I talked about was in Lima, Ohio, and Lima is it's got a strange conglomeration of worse than bigger cities and richer than bigger cities, and it's very strange dynamics in Lima that I'm not sure I can really explain in a radio show. But the point of this is basically it's bad enough in those neighborhoods that the idea of a narcissistic shooting like this will probably be very alien to I don't know, to people who have to live in impoverished neighborhoods that are more controlled by gangs. And it's a totally different environment and a totally different reasoning behind these killings, and the dynamics of it are much more complex, probably even than those behind the mass killings that do get reported and promoted by the media. And when I say promoted by the media, that's not an accident. I do mean promoted. The media makes a big deal about these in a bad way, rather than actually doing a good job of analyzing them and trying to seek solutions for the problem. They simply pile on like vultures and figure out what aspects of it they want to exploit and do so. And I think in doing so, they provide fodder for the next narcissist who steps into that mindset and decides that they either don't care about the consequences or might be able to get away with the same kind of behavior.
Well, you know what I think this comes down to is that, the reason why, Gamergate is so easily blamed for something like this, for example, is it really comes down to the technological illiteracy, or even just the laziness in reporting on anything that has to do with the internet. Any kind of internet research they seem to be entirely inept at doing. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's laziness, or if they really don't know how to do a Google search or look some of this stuff up, because it's really obvious. I mean, we have a list here of some of the things that have been attributed to Gamergate by people on Twitter, just trying to. It's really dumb.
Let's do this.
It's really dumb. I mean,
these are all basically attempts to slander, libel, paint Gamergate in the worst possible light at every opportunity, because the tactics of the social justice warriors is generally, if we make them look like bad people, then people will ignore them, right? I mean, that seems to be the predominant tactic.
To me, it seems like, has there been any tragedies since Gamergate began? Well, there you go. Must have been Gamergate.
Yeah, like ISIS.
Can you hear me?
No, like the ISIS, the KKK thing, right? Didn't
oh god, well,
Joss Whedon
no, they said
or something.
Yeah, we've been called, like, I guess the thing was like KKK daycare, and like that we're worse than ISIS, that sort of thing. But it's so incredibly bizarre when you go through these things, and you'll find them say stuff like, well, they'll blame the shooting of Trayvon Martin to it, or suicides that were committed by game developers who may have had no interaction whatsoever with anyone from Gamergate at all, or who might have even not been on social media as often. There's no proof is given that they were harassed by Gamergate at all.
Yep.
It's just, I mean, there's some other things here, like one of the Charlie Hebdo tragedies, just all of these, the Charleston shooting, just anything you can think of is here on the damn list.
Gamergate killed Jesus.
God. Yeah, well, the wasn't the one the Elliot Rodger thing was linked to Gamergate in a way, because Anita Sarkeesian made that tweet where she said, "While the bodies weren't even cold yet."
Oh no, that wasn't
Elliot Rodger.
That
was a different one.
That was the shooting at the high school in Washington State. I can't remember.
Yes.
Okay, yes, that's right.
And she went with toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Of it, which, the link there is that they seem to think Gamergate is toxic masculinity, is evidence of toxic masculinity. This is actually, it's the same thing as did happen with MRAs and Elliot Rodger. It's just that hopefully Gamergate stemmed it at the very beginning by providing enough proof that they weren't going to just roll over and take it. That maybe the station will actually, own up to their mistake, and hopefully they actually will issue a retraction. It would be really nice to see that. But it's the same. What would have happened if Gamergate had just rolled over and taken it, or if discussion of it had stayed just within, like, the hashtag and forums where Gamergaters discuss things, and maybe it had just been talked about, and nobody had contacted the station, because, like, we really couldn't do this with David Futrell. You can correct David Futrell's mistakes as much as you want, and he doesn't fix things. When he learns that somebody's not an MRA, he doesn't fix that. He argues with it. And Judgy Bitch has a great article up about him, where she draws comparison between his behavior and what it indicates about his mental health and the gay cannibal killer from Canada. Not the one in the United States, not Dahmer, but I guess there was one in Canada as well. In any case, the guy was very narcissistic, and he had a very specific set of behavioral tendencies that very, very clearly match up with the way Futrell interacts with us. But the same series or procedure would have taken place, I'm fairly certain, because other media was already starting to cite the ABC story. And it basically would have been the same house of cards reporting system, where one media source that's just a local media source or a blog or something along those lines that maybe doesn't have national credibility reports on something that they really haven't backed up with a great deal of facts or sources or anything like that, that their sources are questionable, or they've made assumptions about things. Like Futrell does he does a really good job of disguising his own assumptions as fact and information. And I can see this reporter sort of doing the same thing by drawing conclusions from a sarcastic tweet and a barely vetted or not vetted at all interview, where they base those assumptions on things that they don't really back them up. And then once that reporting is out there, all these other sources that are maybe more, all these other news sites that are maybe more credible in grades, you'll have one layer of a higher grade of credibility report on it, and those get cited by the next layer of a higher grade of credibility up, and so on. And then you end up with national news sources that are believed by everybody reporting on something with sources cited that actually haven't vetted the information at all. They've just cited other sources. And they have this house of cards of bad source citation, where the fact that the source is a bad source is buried between layers and layers of citation of each other. And it's you can't really believe anything that you read in the establishment press anymore because of this. But it is interesting to see the difference in how the two groups have handled this. And of course, like I said, with men's rights activists, we're dealing with people like Futrell, who, I mean, you could send him concrete proof that what he said was wrong, and he wouldn't correct it. I'm certain of that. So it'll be interesting to see if ABC, which is an actual news site, does any better than the blog We Hunted the Mammoth.
It would be. I don't know. I think the only way. Well, people like Futrell, they're I don't think it's worth it to try to change their minds. But when it comes to the mainstream press, I think that the only way that they would alter their narrative or start to take like things like Gamergate or men's rights or these sorts of things more seriously is if they thought it would actually impact their ability to make money. Like basically if the events of SPJ Airplay cause more mainstream or at least larger game journal sites to start looking at Gamergate in an honest two sides to the argument, giving them like a platform to actually speak their side instead of just saying that, accusing them of the usual shit that they've been doing. And then it starts to get people's attention, and they see that those people start to profit off of that because you get more clicks and all that, then others will start to take it seriously as well. But until then, I don't know. I don't think it'll affect them until it starts affecting them financially. I just have a really low opinion of our mainstream press.
Well, you should an establishment press, not mainstream.
Yeah, establishment press.
Yeah, I have a fairly low opinion of the press too, as you anybody who listened to Oliver's stream on Sunday, I believe, would know.
Yeah.
Gwen, the Lily, who sometimes came on our show before, I think she did anyway, at least once, she had a rant about how it just seems like you can't keep the press in check, and they're just this terrifying bunch of thugs and bullies that just destroy people willy-nilly whenever they want. And what do you do? Like, what can you do? I mean, the press essentially did this to us, the honey badgers. No, they turned our name into mud, except for the people who actually listened to us and the people involved in Gamergate. And there was nothing we could do about it. And we've all experienced this just as men's rights activists. We have our positions distorted. We get people planted in our groups, and it's it's frustrating. The press are not doing their job. They at this point in time, I do not know how the press ever got above lawyers. Because it seems like, in terms of public esteem, it seems like they should be below lawyers. Because they're worse. As a group, it seems like. At this point in time, they're worse. They have less morals than what we conceive lawyers to have, or politicians. Collectively. And they deserve that. They deserve the most appalling reputation. Because they've completely and utterly abandoned any pretense of integrity, or the fact that they are entrusted with the public good. And there's just too many of them out there now who are completely corrupt, and those are the ones that seem to control the largest platform. And they control the largest platform, and you know what? We all have some culpability in this, because we all are driven like chimps to feast on our own frickin' psychological vomit called outrage.
I wanted to add a quick thing before I give it to Hannah too. One of the main reasons why, you've ever asked yourself, why is it websites like that have zero news and nothing but opinion pieces based on feels and no research that just cite other websites, for example, Jezebel and the Mary Sue and XO Jane and the Huffington Post, that I know that I just listed off a bunch of feminist sites, but they get a lot of traffic, and a lot of people like what they're saying, and one of the reasons why they have no interest in changing their narrative or being more fair or doing research or trying to basically to raise their standards to something that is resembling something other than a glorified Tumblr blog post, is the fact that people actually think that they actually buy into that female victimhood narrative. They buy into it hook, line, and sinker every single time, and it's like they want to believe it, and so they give them money. And the Mary Sue knows, they have to know, like these sites have to know that this is not the reality. If they wanted to dig further, that the fact that there is so much information that refutes or at least calls into question a lot of the stuff that they say, but they don't care because they just want to make money. Those places do not care about women. They do not care about minorities. They do not care about the people that they purport to be in service of. They only care about getting your money by generating clicks. Why is it whenever you go to these spaces, if you scroll down and you try to look at comments, you get a whole bunch of those shitty-ass, click here to find out what this person said or what this cheerleader was wearing or whatever? Because that's money. That's all that's there for. They have no scruples about it, and they know it. Some of them, like Gawker, have confessed to it, but they also try to be on the right side of history. I mean, they may believe it on some level, but I think that the fact that there's so much money coming in, and with the advent of social media like Facebook and Twitter, it's only multiplying that. I can't even imagine how rich they're getting off of this shit, and it's really disgusting because the damage that they cause, not only in the relationships between people of different races or people from different countries or people who are secular or religious or the women and men or the gay and the straight, the trans and the cis, all of that damage that they're leaving behind, they don't care. They're completely heartless about it. And, this has to be challenged. So.
What I will say is that this is something that's been demonstrated throughout history. Throughout history, has been shown that domineering people, bullies in particular, when they get into a situation where they are dealing with somebody who cannot hit back and who cannot defend themselves and who cannot run away, that they become incredibly insufferable at the very least. I mean, they're deadly at the worst, but they become incredibly insufferable at the very least. They will torture their victims. They will, and they will torment in the long term. And they will humiliate and ridicule. They will all those kinds of things. How that relates to this, the mainstream press has done, the establishment press has done a very similar thing. Prior to the internet being around, there really wasn't, if they lied about something, there really wasn't anyone out there. There was no other voice. There was no way for people to correct that lie that you could actually make accessible to the masses. And this is something that I don't think most people understand because they're not involved with the media and they're not necessarily aware of the environment within the media. There is a great deal of not just the social justice mentality, but almost a crusade mentality in especially in American press. And American press is really ideological, and it's kind of crazy because the definition of journalism, if you look up like the American Press Institute, which I quoted in an article a while back, they define journalism as the activity of gathering, assessing, creating, and presenting news and information. And they go on to describe the value of that information coming from a purpose of providing people with verified information they can use to make better decisions, and that's the factor that differentiates journalism from other forms of communication, like persuasive advertising and persuasive argument and things like that. Journalism was never supposed to be persuasive argument. But modern media publishers, modern media workers who call themselves journalists are using it as a form of persuasive advertisement and a form of persuasive argument. They're using it as a form of propaganda for their own political beliefs. And because of that, they have created kind of I don't like the term good old boys network, but this is very much that. If you take the boys out of it, because there's a lot of women involved in this as well, more like good old ideology network. And it's very hard to break into, say, the upper echelons of media unless you go to media that's specific to your political ideology. And you can make it if you fake it for a while. But as soon as you fail to walk in lockstep, a ton of bricks comes down on your head. It's like a banhammer. You become ostracized in the media in your particular area if you cannot toe the party line or the ideological line. And because of that, they have basically had an echo chamber for like the last 60 years or so. Basically since before the start of the Vietnam era. And the internet's now challenging that, and they don't know how to handle it. And what we're seeing now is essentially a culture war between people who are used to having an iron grip on a flow of information, and people who have discovered that they don't have to tolerate that. And it's starting to get ugly now, where people like Jeff Charlotte of GQ magazine are attempting to use the same methods that the media has always used to deal with people who question them. And it's not working because people who they're using those methods on are able to prove when they lied and are able to call them out on their behaviors and demonstrate that they've been manipulative with their writing and their reporting. So it's going to get interesting. I don't think this is the last time we're going to see this type of effort.
Nope.
I think this is probably a toe in the water to see how Gamergate responds, what they're going to deal with when they do this to Gamergate, and I expect to see more of either of this or similar.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
You know what, Brian? We could
Uh-huh.
talk about the Mary Sue article in which Brianna Wu has decided that Samus is a trans woman.
Or
And we
always
could-
was.
Or always was, and we could do it on air for everybody to hear, or if you're in the Twitter chat, if you actually stuck with us instead of going on the Sargon stream, I have put the link to the Google Hangout for the after chat in the low bar. Why don't you guys join us for a chat about Samus in private as a thank you for sticking around instead of, blowing off.
But we can only fit 10 people in here.
Well, I think that's first come, first serve.
Okay.
That's what I think we should do.
All right.
Brian.
No, that's fine. But yeah, so let's see if we can't dismantle this in the private chat, and we'll see if Brianna Wu is correct that a character that's been around for 30 years has suddenly decided to be a trans character since the beginning.
Yeah.
Remember, Brianna Wu is the person who
No, Hannah. This is just for the people who stuck with us. This discussion is just for them. Everybody else, yeah, you missed out. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. So,
all right.
Good night.